Public notice, the use of, let me start all right. Notice is hereby given that the City Council City of Alpine will hold a regular meeting at 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday, August 15, 2017, in the City Council chambers at 803 West Howard, in the City of Alpine, Texas, for the purpose of considering the text agenda. The notice is posted pursuant to the Texas Open Meeting Act, Section 55.043, Texas Government Code. And if anyone has a cell phone, please turn them off. Okay. And members of the audience will be provided an opportunity to address the council during public hearings and during action items. Please speak into the microphone located at the podium and state your name and address. If you have a petition or other information pertaining to your subject, please present it to the city secretary. State law is generally prohibits the council from discussing or taking any action on any issue not included on the agenda. But if appropriate, the council may schedule the topic for future discussion or refer the matter to staff. No personal attacks on council members or city staff will be allowed. The mayor may call a point of order to stop the personal attack. If an individual continues the personal attack on an elected official or staff member in the meeting, they may be barred from speaking in the future. I hereby call the meeting to order. We'll have the invocation by the Reverend Lana Covington.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the privilege of gathering tonight. Dear Heavenly Father, I offer my thanks for those who have agreed to sit as council members and mayor of this city council. I pray that you might be with them tonight, that they might have good information as they deliberate, that they might have wisdom. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for those who have gathered to participate in their own city government. Dear Lord, it's a privilege that we have to do that, and we just pray that you would be each person here. We thank you, Lord, that we are able to open this meeting with an invitation and call upon you to be here with us in spirit. We pray that decisions that are made, Heavenly Father, will be decisions that will help all the citizens of Alpine. Will show respect for every citizen and will glorify your name. I pray in the name of Jesus.
Thank you very much. The pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the flag. I pledge allegiance to you, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you much. Thank you, Reverend Covington. City Secretary, you have a quorum.
Mayor, we do have a quorum, and the meeting was posted at 9:30 on August 8th.
And the city manager is not present. We sent an email that he was taking time off. Right? And for those of you that don't know, City Gonzalez is our new city secretary. Okay. And we have no presentations today. Reports, I don't have a report. City manager, none. Okay. We'll move to city staff report. None. Public hearing. None. Consent agenda. The minutes, financial reports, department written report, board appointments. Notice to the public. The following items are of routine and administrative nature. The council has been furnished with a background and support material on each item, and or it has been discussed at a previous meeting. All items will be acted upon by one vote without being discussed separately unless requested by council member, in which event the item or items will immediately be withdrawn for individual consideration in its normal sequence. And after items not requiring separate discussion have been acted upon, the remaining items will be adopted by one vote. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written. I'll second.
Okay, motion to make second. Any discussion? Seeing none, raise your right hand if you approve of the motion. Those against with the same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, information or discussion items. Item A, City Council seats.
Mr. Mayor and Council, so the purpose of this was to provide you all an overview of the presentation to be given this Thursday here to the board and commissions who provide support to us as City Council. The observation we've talked about before is I don't think we've ever trained our boards or commissions, at least in a long, long time. So it's probably worthwhile to do this. I had planned to have some slides up, but the technology's gotten past us today, but let me walk through what we intend to do. We've invited certainly to this all of the boards and commission members for all 6 boards that support us. And specifically, our city secretary has gone out and gotten feedback about which chairs will be there and which will not. Right now, we have 3 of the chairs will be there, 3 will not. It's my opinion that in order for someone to serve as a chair, they need to go to some training. It's no different than we have to go to training for tone level. We're not allowed to be on city council. So my intent is we'll hold the training on Thursday. For those 3 that are there, I'll then follow up with each of the 3 other individuals. I've spoken with 2 of them already and get them to close and report back out at next meeting when that training is accomplished. Our intent is to tag team this. I put together a set of slides that I would present, and then Adolfo's planning to come in and be here as well on Thursday to present 2 important topics for each of our boards and commissions. The topics he's going to cover is Meeting Act and Robert's Rules of Order. There is no state law or requirement that our take training in either one of those, but I think it's appropriate given we've got to follow it in our boards and commissions. The key items we're going to cover on Thursday night is the legal requirement that establishes each of the boards and commissions. And for all 6 of them, I'll provide the documentation about where it is in the code of ordinances for each one of them. So, for example, planning and zoning, it's Chapter 2 administration, and the airport advisor, it's Chapter 14, Section 14. Parks and Recs, it's Chapter 74. Animal advisory, that's in that Chapter 10, Article 6, Sections 10-222-224. Beautification environmental is Chapter 2 under administration again, and building standards, which is in Appendix C, Section 9. The intent is to walk through each of those and also chairs understand how many members are on each board and what constitutes a board. We ran into a little bit of an issue last night and wanted to make sure that we get all that properly covered because each of our boards, well, most of them have 5 members, but there are 3 that have different members. That's planning and zoning has 7, actually has 8, and beautification and environmental board actually has 6. So walking through that will be important. The next thing I'll walk through is responsible chairs. What is responsible for each of the chairs? And we established that as a council here a number of months ago. I'm going to walk through the notion about, the charter, that they've got to have a good knowledge about the charter, that they will meet with us as a council at least once a year. And thus far, we've not had any boards come forward and meet with us, so we're going to want to put that on the table to have them come meet with us to make sure there's alignment about annual objectives. They're also responsible for setting the board and commission meeting dates and the agendas. Of course, they get help from the staff individual from the city helps them, but that's an opportunity to work through that. Make sure they've got the agendas out and then conduct the meeting consistent with TOMA and the guidelines of Robert's Rules of Orders. And then in the case of 4 of the groups, they're responsible for providing their own minutes. And we have 2 cases where city secretaries provides minutes. One is for the planning and zoning, and the other is for the building and standards commission. We'll walk through the responsibilities of the members and making sure they understand, and as we've talked about before, making sure we have proper attendance. And then I think we're going to find ourselves in a situation as council. We may have to take some action as a city council to ask some people, says, hey, your attendance isn't kind of meeting the mark, particularly when we don't have forums, and so we can get people lined up who want to do The other item I'm going to talk about is the role of the city secretary. I think it's important that the role of the city secretary be covered because the city secretary is essentially responsible for posting notice of meetings, but also is our expert when it comes to the ordinances, the rules and regulations that we have at council. And so the city secretary becomes a good resource for each of the board and commission chairs that they'll go off and spend time with. So often we'll talk about TOMA and Robert's Rules and Orders. And the feedback I've gotten, there's a number of the board chairs that are excited about participating in that session on Thursday. So that's the game plan. Any questions, comments, or thoughts, or things you think I covered that you currently, I know you're going to be there since we've got you currently chair, so this will be good. Be an opportunity, and I'll provide copies of all these slides to those participating. In addition, I want to make sure we bring copies of the respective board and commission charters that's listed in the ordinances, so they've got the details about what they're supposed to do, as well as the documents that we as city council approve about what the chair's roles and responsibilities are. So they walk away with that information and make sure they're all working.
It's a great idea. Thanks for that. Next. Because we do need that. And I think sometimes that's what some boards, they don't have the leadership or they don't know what direction they're going. I think what you're doing is fantastic because they'll be on some guidance. Everybody that did it come with it. Good. Thanks, sir.
Thanks. That's all I have on that subject.
Okay.
So all of the board members are going to get that.
So eventually, I expect all the board members, all the board members are invited. First, I want to make sure the chairs get it, and then I think we'll end up having some of that education as part of each of the board and commission meetings. And that's the offer I'll make to each of the boards. You know, the boards and the commission chairs can look at that, will make that presentation to the boards and commissions.
Has anybody objected to doing this?
No, everyone's looking forward to it. In fact, the comments I've gotten from a number of people I've talked to is, thank you, we need it. You know, we get appointed, we're on it, then it's, you know, we kind of look for some help about how to move forward. So I think everyone's looking forward to it, and no one objected, they'll say, please put it on.
Thanks, sir. Okay. Item B. That'll be Councilman Fitzgerald.
Yeah, this will probably be fairly brief because we distributed about a dozen copies of this thing, and I got 0 comments from anybody. So what Hugh and I decided to do, and we've got the blessing of the county judge and the city manager, is we're going to put together a list of bullet points and then give it to an attorney. Because between me and Hugh, we got 9 degrees, but none of them are law. You need a professional to do this, you know. And the county judge and city manager are on board with that. We will put together a list of bullet points based on this professional's assessment, and he is a professional. And go from there, and kind of distribute that, and if everybody giving benediction on that, we'll give it to an attorney. I don't know whether it be a county attorney or a city attorney. And have a professional make the final argument. Everybody seemed to think that was probably a good plan. I'm an accounting type, I'm not an attorney. and he was an Air Force colonel. So that's pretty much where I stand.
So Vince, I think the one thing that would be helpful, because it was difficult to derive from this what the cost associated with each of the findings would be. I think that's going to be an important part is getting the interlocutory agreement with you. I think that would be terrific. And we'll talk about cost management.
A couple of the things that I came away from was the fact that he very definitely stressed we have way too much equipment. And you need to, because that, you got registration fees, you got insurance, you got maintenance. But we don't need all that stuff, And again, another thing that I liked about it was that city council has the right of final refusal of the chief of the fire department. Now, I don't see any reason to change that. Scudder's been a chief forever. But it's good that we have the option to be able to do that. Those are the 2 main things I do.
Yeah, I think so I agree with the consolidation. The question is where it makes a recommendation to go, for example, the ladder truck. Repaired, sold, but should be replaced. That's probably a $250,000 item. And so those are the big ticket items. We're going to want to understand what the
Absolutely. Yeah. like I've said before at these meetings, I spend a lot of time on the third floor of Solid House doing my graduate work. And if there was a fire, I couldn't get out of there. I'd be real unhappy if they couldn't get up to it with a ladder truck.
Has the county done any allocation of the funds that they received from ETP that were dedicated to fire? Or is the strategy, they've got their bucket, we've got our bucket, we're going to look at using those dollars to meet the needs that come out of this?
Yeah, I don't think that anything's been definite yet. Get the ETP money, great, you know, but let's wait and see. Let's first of all get the money in hand, then decide what we're going to do with it. I think that this would be a great help in determining exactly what we need to do.
Yeah, but the part of the question was making sure that, and I'm sure this is the case, the county won't take any action with the money they got from ETP until an integrated plan comes together.
Oh, yeah.
Very absolutely.
Yeah, you know, you and I meet like every week, you know, and every once in a while we'll meet with Eric and with Judge Conlon. Try to keep everybody in the loop.
Chair, no question. Correct. We got money for ETP for the fire department, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, we cannot give it to them because they're not a 501c. So how is that money going to be funded?
Well, I'm not sure. We got to get the money first.
Yeah, I understand that, but when we
Then
do
when
get
we
it,
do get it, then we'll decide.
okay. That's something else. Just thinking about.
So there's
Well, maybe Megan knows, since she's the finance director.
We actually have the money.
yeah, oh, yeah.
The money's been received and it's actually in a reserve account. So it's not part of our regular.
But my question is, can we give it to them since they're not a 501?
Nothing requires it to be a 501c3. I mean, we're a city, we can allocate the resources starting from point for each city's needs.
Okay, I just wanted to so make sure we're on the right thing.
The money was given to the city for the fire department, not directly to the fire.
Okay, very good.
So they just have to basically, y'all work out the deal with the county and it's just a matter of when an expense comes up, the money's moved from the reserve to the checking and spent as necessary.
You're done. Thank you very much for the report, sir. Next is the item C, and then go back to Councilman Stevens.
Thanks. So the subject of this is the Brewster County Appraisal District update. As the city's representative on the Brewster County Appraisal District Board, I do receive a fair amount of hate mail because of what the tax base is right now. You know, through some questions, people say, how come the taxes have gone up so much? Just to give a little bit of background, we actually had a tax board meeting today at 11 o'clock. If you look at property values across the county, you know, property values across the county have gone up about $102 million. So that provides some perspective. Within the city, property values have gone up approximately $25 million. So that provides some sense about the increased values in terms of the assessor's process. And the areas that have been impacted the most are in three different categories. There's special codes form. One is single-family dwellings, non-agricultural land, and commercial real estate, mostly in the area of hotels, motels, because the state has changed its approach about how it evaluates motel property. They have moved away from a valuation of the land and buildings to a cash flow basis. And so if you've got a hotel and you have to turn in your receipts and receive the benefit through the hotel occupancy tax, the state is now doing valuations based upon that. So that's how our Brewster County tax authority, tax appraisers go off and work that. So the process is moving well, and I think I shared with an individual approached me the other day and says, gee, Rick, my taxes went up 100%. And I made comment because I happen to know these individuals. I said, well, I'm aware of how much you purchased your house for. And I said, I'm also aware that you're trying to sell your house for more than twice of what you purchased it for. And so you're complaining that your taxes went up 100%, but the valuation has gone up 100%. I said, do I understand it correctly? I said, yeah, you do. I said, okay, I get it. But if you think your house is worth twice, you're going to end up paying more on the taxes. So The Brewster County Tax Appraisal District goes based upon what the valuations are for the market at the time. From an overall appraisal district, now the management side, and we don't get involved in appraisals. Our job is to make sure that there are sufficient resources to go do the appraisals for the property across all of Brewster County, including Alpine. We have a budget this year that we approved at our meeting today of $477,629, and total of $2,800 from where we were last year. So not much more we're spending. The good news is last year the city of Alpine was assessed $63,000 for our portion, and next year we're going to be assessed a little bit more than $62,000. So the budget for the city of Alpine actually went down because the tax base in Brewster County went up significantly, and we allocated based upon the tax base. That's how we allocate how the $477,000 are allocated. Good news is the Brewster County Appraisal Tax District is good financially. We have about $300,000 in the checking account, so it's well managed, well funded, and we've got a good trained staff on there. And I think Denise Forrest, who's the chief appraiser, who's been on board a little more a year, is doing a terrific job. All of the folks are properly trained, and we also monitor the amount of training that they get, regularly. One of the things that I may bring back to council in the future, that'll be after talking to the city manager, is the tax board does need to go buy a new vehicle. And one of the things I suggested, it may be worthwhile for them to consider getting a vehicle as part of the City of Alpine vehicle lease program, and maybe more cost effective to them. Since we end up paying the cost, whatever it is, it'd be nice to try and reduce the cost rather than go spend $40,000 to go buy a new vehicle. So I'll bring that back to council if that's something that works to sort itself out as we're going through. That's all I have. Are there any questions? No questions. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to some action items to be accompanied by a brief statement of facts. Include where funds are coming from, the applicable action items limited to 10 per meeting. Citizens are allowed to comment within 3 minutes. After being called upon by the mayor, citizens are required to state their name and ward that's inside. Priority to be given to the citizens of Alpine, those who own business or property in the city. Individuals who do not live or own business or property in the city limits of Alpine will be allowed to speak at this time available. City Councilman.
Thanks very much. So I actually drafted this ordinance, and it's a result of sitting in the city municipal court a number of times, listening to one of the challenges that court has, and that has to do with weeds. A little bit of history. As we all know, the ordinance requires that when weeds are over 12 inches, then the resident, the owner, are supposed to mow it down to make sure it stays within 12 inches because it's a fire hazard. And one could argue, there's been debates back and forth about that, but I think the city has done a reasonable job trying to manage that. Tends to not go after people unless it's well above the 12 inches. The challenge we get into is that the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 54, says that the city cannot abate the weeds or grass unless it's in excess of 48 inches. So we got 12 inches, one thing, but the city can't take any action unless it's over 48 inches. There are a number of individuals who have property in the city of Alpine, are not residents of the city of Alpine, and so the city can take no action until it goes over 48 inches. Even though there may be a citation against an individual, there is no course of action that the city can take to compel someone to show up and get it mowed if they don't live in town, because we are not a court of record. We are a municipal court. Even if we were a court of record, I would find it difficult to believe that we can compel someone to come back and take action. So the net result is the weeds grow, creates a fire and safety hazard, which is why the weed issue is under Chapter 54, Health and Sanitation. So my proposal, as this is the first reading of the ordinance, they'll propose we change the weed ordinance to be in excess of 48 inches to be 24 inches. That would allow that if the weeds are in excess of 24 inches, the city can take action, mow the weeds, put a lien against the property. That way we maintain safety and from a health standpoint. And in the event that once the individual comes to sell the property, they will have to sell it to the city as part of going off and working it. But that also just resolves the issue to be able to go with that. So that's why the ordinance as written proposes that we change it to 48 inches, 24 inches. There are no other actions. I think the other element is the way in which that gets implemented is our Building and Standards Commission is the one who will have to implement it. So when it goes above 24 inches, the Building and Standards Commission, which is actually a judiciary committee, can take legal action to cause that to occur, and the city keep track of it. So that's the proposal. So, Mr. Mayor, I propose that City Council approve ordinance 2017-08-01 that amends section 54-201 Code of Ordinances, chapter 54, health and sanitation, abatement of weeds or grass in excess of 48 inches. As followed, the city may abate without notice weeds or grass that have grown higher than 24 inches and are an immediate danger to health, life, or safety of any person, and that the city may assess expenses and create liens under this section against the property on which the city does the abatement. So at the first reading, they'll come to public hearing. Next meeting, we'll be able to get comments back.
Motion been made, it's second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, like sign. That's been an issue that's been ongoing with vacant landowners. We are trying to collect them on this. I think we put some teeth into it now, but we can do something about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, please.
My name is Kevin Dehan. I live in Ward 3 and proud to live in Ward 3. There is an area on the west side. It's the end of 12th Street. It goes from Uvalde to Eagle Pass. It's unpaved, and the grass just grows there like crazy. And this is part of the city's venue to take care of this. Under this new ordinance, it will just be required that the residents take care of making sure the grass is not above 24 inches, or is it also part of the city's venue to make sure that the grass is cut? Or in other words, is the ordinance applied just to the taxpayers and not the tax vendors, or both?
Intent would apply both. Intent would apply to both, without regard to who's the owner. It's got to be 24 inches.
So 2 years ago, I went to the city and I had no results. I went to my councilman, and a short time later, it was taken care of. The grass was 7 feet high. It's 48 inches high now, and it's not mowed. So, does the city take responsibility for that?
The city's supposed to take care of its land. That's correct.
I've been mowing. I've been trying to mow it because 2 years ago we had an infestation of fleas and mice and rats and a skunk. And after we mowed, everything went away, except mosquitoes. But will the city take care of it?
Well, that's a city manager responsibility, and I think you did the right thing talking to Pitts and go get it followed up. We have the same issues in a number of different wards. We all take the same action. Go get it.
Anytime I've spoken to Pitts, I've got results. So happy to. All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Amelia Rodriguez, Ward 4. And I would like to see if we can get, because this is the Chihuahua Desert that we live in, I'd like to see a discussion on what a weed is. Because a lot of us do a lot of xeriscaping, and we think that a lot of the native grasses are very beautiful. So perhaps we could get also a definition of what a weed is and what it isn't. There's a lot of people that cover their properties with a lot of excesses on non-native plants, so you're going to have a lot of decision making as to what constitutes a weed and what isn't.
And we can do that.
So, in fact, I had biologists come to my property and tag all of the items, and I've got xeriscaping, native plant going on landscaping, and I've been called in for weeds, which I object to.
Thank you.
So, okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
So it's a good point.
Yeah, because
My sense is we ought to pass the beautification and environmental committee to work that. That's what they got the expertise for, that's what we want.
any more discussion? Okay, you have made a motion on that today.
I think we passed them.
Yes, okay, sorry. Oh, that's right, yeah. I'm lost today. Okay, let's go ahead and move over to item number 9, Councilman Fitzgerald.
Yeah, okay, this was put up here because County Carpenter wanted it addressed, and so at the advice of the attorney, I sponsored it. But I really don't have much of a background on it. I mean, Councilor Stevens is in his ward, and he knows about it. And I'd like to pass the conversation over to him.
So I'm happy to talk about it. I will not vote on it because, as I've talked about before, properties that are currently in discussion in Coconut Heights, I'm spending some time trying to get that sorted out because of roads that have never been put in Coconut Heights, and working with a number of property owners. This particular one happened to go through, as you recall, there was a sale at 1002 North Loop Road. And Beulah Coconut sold the land, and as you recall, City Council took the action to abandon part of the road on North Rouge and an extension of the road that was leading up between the two pieces of property in Coconut Heights. And there was an evaluation made of that property at $19,000 as part of that. And we City Council went through and approved the valuation, and the property was sold and moved forward. Subsequent to that, County Carpenter sent a letter to me that was dated July 7th and said, gee, subsequent to the sale, I've gone off and got another appraiser and would ask that council reconsider the value of that property, because the other appraiser has come in with that property being $11,600 versus the $19,000 that we originally made our decision on. And he asked that we bring that, that I bring that before council, as Fitz has talked about, even though it's in my ward, because of the abstention that I'll take. It was important for Fitz to bring it forward. So that's the basis of what this comes forward to, and what is asked to be considered is that the valuation that was originally $19,000 be reevaluated $11,600, which would obligate the city to make a refund back to Beulah Coconut of between $19,000 and $11,600. The only other comment I'd make is we've had this on the agenda three times before, but I did commit to make sure we bring this back before for council consideration. So I'm going to leave it at that and not make any comment. So I'm going to stay for voting no matter which way it goes. But that's the background behind it. I think council has to decide, does it want to go for the new valuation or not? And council may want to get Johnny's perspective on why the valuation didn't come in until July.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to know what Johnny has to say about it. That's one heck of a difference. 19 to 11.6.
Good afternoon. I'm Johnny Carpenter. I live in Ward 5. Work for Department of Real Estate. Represented Ms. Beulah Coconut. And he is correct with the history of this. Howard there's Coconut. And I personally felt like the appraisal comps that were used were not truly comparable, and the value was excessive. I went to City Manager Eric Zimmer and asked if we might present a second appraisal. He said we are welcome to do so. And so we've asked Paul Letworth, who's a longtime resident and state approved appraiser, who's very familiar with Alpine area appraisals, to come and present his appraisal to you. And I thank you very much, and I will turn this over to Mr. Paul Letworth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. My name is Paul Letworth. I do not currently reside inside the city limits of Alpine and have not for over 30 years. You throw a rock to hit city limits and it would be Ward 3. I was retained by Mr. Carpenter as an agent of Hewlett Coconut to conduct a market value appraisal of the two streets that Councilor Stevens mentioned for the purpose of setting a value on it. In the brief amount of information that I was given regarding the previous appraisal, I disagreed with not only the comparables that were used, but the conclusion of the highest and best use of the particular property. Determination of highest and best use is the primary first question that has to be answered in conducting an appraisal of any piece of property, regardless of what it is. And what is that? I challenge you, or would ask that you consider these two essentially half the width of streets of varying lengths on two separate sides of the subject property, have very, very little functional utility considered alone. You do with 30 feet wide piece of property, 200 some feet long. If zoning ordinances allowed it, you could put a single wide mobile home on it, but there may not be room enough on to go to the back part of the property or to park the vehicle. So in consideration of the two subject properties, the best answer in my experience is assemblage with the adjoining properties. Consider the two together. This is a property. I help with my hands and I apologize. And if you look in the appraisal report that was provided to you, you'll see the parent tract owned by Ms. Coconut totals 2.5 acres based on a recent survey. The two adjoining properties, adjacent properties, total 0.38 acres, bringing the total to 2.88. And I'm trying to be quick here. When you do an assemblage appraisal, the proper method of doing that is to appraise the subject property, hopefully, and as assembled. The difficulty is finding comparable sales that are of 2.5 acres and 2.88 acres. So you kind of have to blend and find the most applicable is the assembled property. If you just appraise 0.38 acres or about 16,000 square feet, which is what the two subject tracts total, you have a completely different highest and best use. You have a different functional utility for that property. So my appraisal addressed the assembled tract totaling 2.88 acres, of which the concluded value is approximately 70 cents per square foot. Going then backwards into that we're not selling the entire 2.88 acres, we're only selling 0.38 acres for a total of 16,553 square feet. The concluded value is $11,587.10, which I took the liberty of rounding up to 11,600. Are there questions for me, ladies and gentlemen? Is there something further that I could try to explain?
He's got to throw a stone.
And my shoulder's not near what it used to be.
I understand that, brother. He's a 71-year-old guy trying like hell to be 72. Okay, yeah. Go on with the appraisal.
Is there making a motion, sir?
That's what I said.
Is there a second? made and seconded to change the appraisal from 19,000, correct? To 11,600. Okay. Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? No. Okay, we'll go on. All those agreeing with this motion, please raise your right hand. All those abstaining, like sign. And you're abstaining, you just come. Yep. Okay, motion carries. So.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for
11,600, sir.
your attention. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. I think you did what was right.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Carpenter. Okay, let's move on to item 10. And Megan, it's in your court today.
This is the first reading for the street closure of Hotel Richie. I apologize, I'll probably slaughter the poor woman's last name. That's she has requested that a portion of Murphy Street be closed in order to continue with the renovations of Hotel Richie, which in the packet includes a picture of what it priorly looked like, which included a 2-story wraparound porch. So she's requesting the street closure for just the front part that's on Murphy Street and is willing to pay the difference. There is an appraisal in there as well to purchase that portion of the land. I believe the appraisal came in at about $500. And this would allow her to put in that porch to, yes, it's the front part, to restore the hotel, continue to restore the Hotel Richie back to its glory days.
That's better.
I approve that.
Council member.
That we approved the first reading for the closure of the Richie Hotel to allow agent. Addie? Matei.
So sorry.
She's had you back there.
Just on the porch. On every street.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion's been made and second. Any discussion?
I got a whole bunch of questions.
Okay, go for it.
So, in looking through the deed of Hotel Richie, there has been an easement that was part of the deed since almost the beginning of time. That easement allowed that porch to exist. And the question that I'm trying to understand is, what will legally happen if the city approves this? Is the request that the easement be eliminated in favor of granting that land to this particular property, or is this for about allowing the easement to continue?
I was provided no background on this item. I don't know, have you talked with Aaron?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Maybe show a little bit of light.
And I
I don't know how much light you said on a little bit. Hi, I'm Abby Matei.
the attorney may be able to provide support as well.
It's not actually a street closure, it's the sidewalk that's directly in front of the Hotel Richie. I heard the same thing in terms of the historical background where there having been
Yeah,
easement in place.
Yeah, to the deed.
But when I went through all of this with Eric Zimmer, it turned out that there was questions about whether or not the easement applied all the way up to today. And so apparently, this has been on for about 6 months. Apparently, they couldn't figure out any way to extend that easement. I personally, I don't need to buy the sidewalk. I just would like the porch back. So if it's an easement that works, if it's a sale that works, whatever works. So it's just replacing the historic sidewalk. Wraparound porch that was on that building as it existed from the very beginning. So nothing more. Apparently, at some point in the last 15, 20 years, it either fell down or was torn down. So I'm just like putting that. But as far as whether it's an easement or a sale, I'm as confused as you are.
So the way in which the ordinance is written, it says that the 222 square feet, more or less, the owner will pay the city of Alpine $500 for the appraised value of the property, and that any other costs necessary for completion of this transaction, in order that a wraparound two-story porch may be restored to the state historic landmark known as the Hotel Ritchie, all legal notice in the deed of post. My impression is, based upon what this says, is that the city would be selling you that 222 square feet. And so that easement would no longer exist. You would own it outright. And that's what you desire.
But I really don't care one way or the other. I mean, it seems a little odd to me to have to buy the sidewalks. I think I'd probably be one of the only commercial structure from the city that owns the sidewalks in front of the building. But if that's, but if that's how it needs to go, then that's fine. You don't want me purchasing the sidewalk.
Yeah, well, because if you don't, and there was any modification of the Hotel Ritchie, again, that easement would no longer be valid.
Ah, so
And
they're
therefore,
purchasing a transfer.
That's correct.
Gotcha. Okay. In that case, yes, I would prefer.
Not just about,
Not
okay.
the sidewalk then.
We want to buy the
Keep it
sidewalk
simple, keep it simple.
because of the historic nature.
Okay.
Yeah, and my perspective on this, I think we as council have to be prepared to respond to anyone else who wants to buy their sidewalk. But in my opinion, because of the historic nature of the Hotel Ritchie, this is a one-time deal. I would not be in favor of having a store. The reason I support it. This is a very unique situation. We saw in here in our packet all the details, because Paul had done the assessment on it. So, given the nature, I think it's right.
Excuse me, counsel. I have to ask a question. Already adjoining land.
Okay, so Adolfo, speak up. We can clearly hear you.
Okay, are there any adjoining landowners that the closure will affect?
No, it's the city owns the street.
Yeah, it's not the,
Yeah.
it's not, it's being.
But besides the hotel, are there any other adjoining landowners?
No, so just the hotel, which happens to have lots. And so I'm also not touching.
Oh, there's a certain process the city has to go through to close a road. And
Well,
certain,
this is not road closure. No, it's not a road closure, it's a sidewalk.
I'm sorry? It's a sidewalk right of way, or is it a road?
Sidewalk.
Road at all. Someone earlier said call it road closure, but it's not a road closure. It's just a transfer of sidewalk ownership.
The ordinance reads a portion of a street, not a public right of way.
I'm not sure why, because it's. Yeah, I heard that earlier. The existing concrete sidewalk that I think was probably poured by the city, a few decades ago. So it's just that sidewalk, the existing sidewalk that goes along the south side of the street. But not the street itself, just the sidewalk. Or any of this street program.
Yeah, Adolfo, just to kind of close the picture of what Dan's walking through, this is only the portion of the sidewalk that's directly in front of the building. She owns the property to the left and to the right of the building. The question you're raising, I think, is exactly on par on one element. That is, it says street closure. We're talking about sidewalk closure, not a street closure.
Yeah.
So
it's generally a purchase of an easement, a public easement. It's not the way the ordinance is worded is not correct.
okay. So can we amend that now? Or can we bring it back?
Well, if it's a closing a portion of a sidewalk, which is a public easement, that's if the description is correct in the ordinance, you can amend it. Have you?
Can I make a suggestion?
I'm
Sorry to interrupt. Can I make a suggestion? That even if I purchase the sidewalk, it can still remain open as a public, through space. I'm fine, I'm fine to have it be used. You just be walking on the sidewalk and walking on the market, walking on the sidewalk again. So it doesn't have to close for a pedestrian access point. So I don't know if that makes any difference. Okay with that.
Also comment?
The agenda says street closure, and it's not a street closure. I think it has to be reposted, and the ordinance has to be reworded.
Okay. So, so I propose that we, given the discussion we had this evening, take this motion until next meeting, and we'll clean up the proposal.
May I ask any comments about the practice that's December 2016? And it's first up, it's been going on month after month after month. I've got a case sitting out there that I'm paying whether I'm building or not. And I'd really like to not wait another month, if at all possible. If it's just verbiage, can we just correct the verbiage?
So here's the problem. Texas Open Meetings Act says you can only talk about that which is posted on the agenda 72 hours prior. And it's talking about street closure. So this is the first time council has seen that.
First time I've seen it too.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So we really don't have a choice.
September. So you know this is probably like $2,500 a month without, that's just the whole stuff. The fee notes are expensive, waiting a month. And,
So the council member who represents Ward 4 the meeting to bring it back prior to the next meeting, which will be on September 5th.
I mean, I'm willing I'll do anything, whatever it takes.
We'll do that.
I wouldn't make an issue of it, but this really did start last year. And it's just been dragging. That'd be great. I really appreciate that very much.
I see the hand raised of the planning and zoning.
Sure.
Call planning board 5. Don't you all have a special meeting set up for very soon?
Second.
And could the first meeting be then held then, please? Which would help.
Yes,
That would be fine.
That's
Yeah.
what we need from there.
That would be great. We could do that. I would really appreciate that.
So we'll table this motion.
Yes.
22nd.
Okay. Motion's been made to table item number 10. And there's been a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of table this till the special calling, raise your right hand. All those opposed, like sign.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So Maddie, just so you know the time schedule, if we're gonna look at it on the 22nd of August, we will still come back for the second reading on September 5th.
Okay.
And so long as it passes there, it's a then meeting.
Okay.
So the schedule remains the same.
Okay. So I still don't get to start work on my report.
You couldn't have anyway, because it takes 2 readings of the.
Okay. Just for the record, Arizona told me I can start construction tomorrow if we approve this tonight, so.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so let's move on to item 11. Acting city manager.
So the next item is to set the dates for special meetings on the second hearing of tax rate and the public hearings for the 2017-18 City of Alpine budget. In your packet included a suggested hearing. The reason why these dates were selected is we have a very, very strict when you can and can't do set by the state. So you have to advertise within or post notice within so many days. You have to have your meetings within so many days. There's a very strict schedule. The proposed budget's already been posted. It's been given to Cynthia. So the first hearing, which would be part of our normal regular scheduled meeting, would be September 5th, and it would be the first tax rate hearing, regular scheduled date. The second one would be September 12th. It would be the second tax rate hearing and the budget hearing, and this would have to be a calls meeting. And then the third one, which would approve the tax rate and then adopt the actual budget, would be September 19th, which is also a regular scheduled meeting. We did present these dates to the attorneys as well, just to make sure we stay within that very strict guideline. And if you're ever curious, they actually post when you can and can't do up until the last date. So if a date is missed, it could throw off the schedule. We are kind of tight with it being in September. We don't want to, not propose or pass something in the time. So I don't know if this works with everyone's schedule, but this was.
It's just another example of how you have to follow along. We don't have a choice.
So I will entertain a motion to adhere to these dates.
Yes, sir. We adhere to the dates.
Is there a second? Okay, motion been made, second. Any discussions? Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. We're going to adhere to the dates for September 5th, 12th, and 19th. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Okay, we're going to move over to City Council comments and answers. And we'll start with Councilman Stevens.
Thank you all for coming. Glad you participated, and I think it's going to be a good meeting, and we should go through. And please pass the word to all your friends and relatives who are on boards and commissions to be there Thursday night after.
Okay.
I'm also glad they're not on today. I believe that they are here. Last 2 weeks ago, I had a Boy Scout, Troop 41, went and interviewed me. His name is AlpineCityCouncil08. He gave me some really interesting questions, and I answered them. He was very well mannered. I wish more kids were like that.
And they were here a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, so it's good. I'm betting doing some follow up on it also.
Yes, and he gave me this quote. He said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand."
Yes, sir.
Thank you all for being here. Appreciate you coming, especially my constituents that are here. Cheryl, Kelly, of course, my Washington bride. It's good to see people coming in there and actually care.
Councilman Curry.
Thanks for showing up.
Okay. This is the second time this has come up about ordinances and stuff. We do have to adhere to the law. You weren't the only one, so we weren't taking on. We had one here, about 2 months ago, I think, 3 months ago, identical to yours. But we kind of expedited it with a special call. We're trying to accommodate to it also.
I appreciate it.
Okay, but we do have to follow along. Thank you very much for understanding. Thank you all for coming.
There was a few years ago, there was someone that circumvented the total. That didn't work out real well.
I propose pursuant to Texas Government Code 55.1.071, consultation with attorney, and 55.074, dealing with personal matters, that we adjourn into executive session.
Okay, and the time, sir?
6:29.
6:29. Okay, we're gonna go into executive session. First, we'll take 5 minutes.
Uh,